Coming up on today's Saturday special edition of Trailblazer Weekly, Dixie State has accepted an invitation to join the Western Athletic Conference and move to Division I status beginning in the 2020-2021 season.
That's right. We'll break it all down and chat with DSU Director of Athletics, Dr. Drayson Boothe, as well as WAC Commissioner Jeff Hurd, to find out just what went into the process of making this all happen.
It's all coming up next. Trailblazer Weekly starts right now.
Live from the CEC studio at Dixie State University, it's Trailblazer Weekly with Keric Seegmiller. And Drayson Ball. This is Trailblazer Weekly.
We are live on a Saturday inside the CEC TV studios on the Community Education Channel, Dixie State Athletics YouTube page, and Radio Dixie 91.3 FM with another edition of Trailblazer Weekly. I might even add a very special edition of Trailblazer Weekly. I'm Keric Seegmiller. Joining me as always is Drayson Ball.
Isn't it just such a great day today, Keric? We had such an amazing event and afternoon yesterday that it feels so good to be doing a special edition of Trailblazer Weekly on what will be known as one of the best weekends, the most outstanding weekends in Dixie State history. I'm excited to be here, and let's get things rolling.
I might even use the word monumental. I think that's I used the word epic when we were talking with the WAC Commissioner Jeff Hurd yesterday, and he said, yeah, I think it's an appropriate word. I mean, it's just huge and the biggest day in Dixie State athletics, period, bar none, yesterday as the announcement was made that Dixie State would be joining the Western Athletic Conference beginning in the fall of 2020 and moving up to Division I status. Did you see the Black Hill last night with the one illuminated and the D1? It just was a fantastic day yesterday. Lots of community support. Of course, all the student athletes, the coaches were there. There were members of the Dixie State Hall of Fame there. Lionel Hollins, Dixie State Hall of Famer, NBA champion, NBA coach. The list goes on and on and on. He was the master of ceremonies, the MC. Governor Gary Herbert was there. His lieutenant governor was there. I mean, anyone who was anyone was inside the Student Activity Center yesterday, and it was a fantastic event. Dixie State Athletics staff, I got to give some shout outs. Dr. Jason Boothe, Associate Athletic Director of External Relations, Wendy Bulkley, Coordinator of Internal Operations, Katie Warnstein, helped out a ton as well. All the great folks up at UMAC, Dixie State Marketing Communications, Megan Church and her staff did a fantastic job putting that event together over the last months, really, and it really went off, I mean, without a hitch, and was a monumental event. We'll circle back to that. Dixie State joining the WAC, going D1.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, it was just such a well put together event. I mean, obviously, I was able to be there and kind of listen to everyone. Like you mentioned, the Governor Herbert and Dr. Jason Boothe, Jeff Hurd, and all those who got the chance to speak, and they all, I thought, had incredible remarks, and it was just a very fun atmosphere, a very fun day. The SAC was packed, and when it was chock full from front to back, and it was just good to see such support from the community. I mean, this is one of those moves that could be divisive in a sense. People that might not want Dixie or St. George or maybe even the school to grow might not be a fan of this move, but overall, I think the support from the community was there. It was evident yesterday during the event at 3 o'clock and then the reception afterwards. It trickled on over into the basketball games we had last night, both the men's and the women's. Very, very good crowds on hand for both of those games as well. So obviously, like you mentioned, a monumental decision and event yesterday moving into the WAC, and I think this is the natural move for Dixie State, and it just makes total sense. I liked what the student body president yesterday said. One of the things he mentioned is, we don't really know a lot of the teams that we're playing against because they're not very common. We're not surrounded by a region of other Division II schools, but we know SUU, we know Weber State, we know University of Utah, Grand Canyon University, Cal Baptist University. We know these teams and we're familiar with them. And by jumping to Division I, I think it really will help people be able to support more of these student athletes and these teams. And I think it's just an excellent decision. It was such a great event yesterday.
Well, I like one thing you brought up too is that, and it helps illustrate how thorough they were in this process, to vet through this process, to make sure that this was truly the right thing for not only the university, not only for the athletics, but for the community as well. And it's huge for the community, but certainly, there probably were a handful of people that, and you even saw a few that were vocal about it on social media saying, I don't know if this is the right thing for Dixie State. Right now, are we ready? Can we do this financially? Is athletics even going to be able to win at this level? I mean, all the same things I think that were brought up when Dixie State moved from junior college and all the success they had as a junior college to NCAA Division II. Now, just 12, 13 short years later, here we are moving to NCAA Division I, and some of those same concerns cropping up. And certainly, the financial things are valid valid questions, valid concerns. We'll have, and they have answers to all those. They feel Dixie State administration, athletic director Jason Boothe really feels like it, and President Williams, they feel like it is financially possible to make this happen. Otherwise, it wouldn't be happening. We'll have Jason on the show here in just a few minutes. We'll be able to ask him about that. And, Dixie State really, in my opinion, making the right move here. Now you're one of, what is it, 5 Division I schools in Utah now, once this is all in. Dixie State, SUU, Weber State, Utah, BYU, and UVU. I mean, 5 or 6 Division I schools. And how many Division II? It was just Dixie State and just Westminster, and Westminster didn't play football. And it makes sense to make that move, be able to have rivalries, especially with UVU in the WAC. You heard yesterday at the event, UVU athletic director was there, and he and Jason Boothe were able to have some banter back and forth, and they swapped hats and basically announced that there was going to be a traveling trophy for this rivalry, which is not new, by the way. These two were both in the Scenic West Athletic Conference when they were both junior colleges, in the early 2000s. UVU making the jump all the way from junior college to Division I, now Dixie State kind of taking that in-between step. That rivalry renewed. It'll be fantastic. One thing that this is all about as well is the student athletes. You can't forget that we're doing this all for the student athlete. It's for the school. It's for the alumni, and the student athletes had a very big role in helping make this decision and talking to them and asking their opinions and getting their opinions. And it was only fitting that the student athletes then in turn had an opportunity to help make the announcement. The university put together a great video to help make the announcement. President Williams announced it yesterday, and then they showed this video. We're going to show it to you now. It is a few members of our student athletes of our various teams basically making this announcement. Let's show you that, and for you radio listeners, you can listen to it as well. This is our student athletes help make the announcement that Dixie State is moving to the WAC.
Hey, guess what? We've been invited to move up to Division I and join the Western Athletic Conference. We are really excited about this opportunity, but we needed to make sure it was the right decision for our athletes, students, institution, and community. So DSU hired Collegiate Consulting to conduct a feasibility study, and we looked into all of the pros and cons ourselves, and
we have some exciting news to share today.
We are accepting the invitation to the WAC.
So what does this mean for DSU?
It means that in July 2020, Dixie State University will be home to a Division I athletic program,
which opens many opportunities for our students, university, and community.
For starters, Division I schools often experience increases in scholarships, enrollment, and completion rates.
Other benefits like more rigorous academic standards, more attention on a national stage.
NCAA and WAC revenues and increased booster support will be amazing for Dixie State.
Currently, the WAC doesn't include football, so you may be wondering if we will have a football team. The answer is absolutely. Football would be an independent Division I team, like several other institutions.
Benefits for the community include increased tourism and revenues,
along with big name programs coming into town for the community to come see us play.
But by far, one of the best parts is playing more Utah schools and creating intense rivalries with other WAC schools,
such as UVU, Cal Baptist, and Grand Canyon University, in addition to having the opportunity to play nearby D1 competitors such as SUU, Weber State, and Northern Arizona.
Hi, I'm Jason Boothe, Dixie State University's Director of Athletics. This is an exciting opportunity for DSU and a natural step in the development of a growing institution and community as we evolve from university status to university stature. We hope you are as excited as we are, and we invite you to come to our games and show your support for our Trailblazers as we prepare to become a powerful Division I athletic program in the WAC and across the nation.
There it is. That video was very, very well put together. You also got to hear from Director of Athletics Jason Boothe, which we'll have him on the show next. It just was fitting that the student athletes would be able to help in making this announcement, because that is what it is all about. One part that jumps out of that video at me, I like the part where it's talking about the teams that we're going to be able to play now. And as you see, we already mentioned the past rivalry with UVU back in the junior college days. And then what are the other teams they mentioned? California Baptist University, Grand Canyon University, and then not to mention we'd be able to play games against SUU and Weber State, but both Grand Canyon University and California Baptist University, Dixie State, and those two other schools were in the Pac-West Conference together. So these are teams that athletic administration is still familiar one with another, and it's going to be a seamless, it should be a seamless transition and be a lot of work, but will be fun. Let's talk about WAC membership. We're running a little bit low on time here in this particular segment, but let's talk current WAC membership and then where Dixie State will fit into this, because there will be a little bit of conference shakeup as well. It's a pretty diverse conference as far as how big the geography of it extends. Drayson, we got a map. Let's pull that map up so you can see it as well. Drayson, start breaking down what you see there, how many current members, and where this conference, as it stands right now, today, is spread out.
Yeah, obviously, I mean, you mentioned it's all over the country, as far east as Chicago, and then over as far north as Seattle, and all the way down to New Mexico State there at the bottom of your screen. I mean, obviously a handful of members, and kind of central there into the southwest corner a bit, but then obviously some other ones, so a very, like you said, diverse and very widespread conference. But it's one of those that you got two from California and from Arizona, a lot of local schools, local general sense of the term, because I mean it's still different states, but obviously you have a more centralized group of schools that you can kind of become familiar with over the course of the years that you're going to be playing them. And so like you mentioned, it's just going to be an incredible opportunity to be able to develop new rivalries with some of the teams that we haven't played, and then obviously renew some of the old rivalries between University of Utah and California Baptist. And I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb and be one to say, I'm looking forward to playing California Baptist again. And I think what was said yesterday in the announcement, I can't remember if it was Dr. Boothe or whoever it might have been, but said that it never gets old beating California Baptist. And so I think that's going to be one of the main rivalries, and I'm really excited. And obviously, like you mentioned, a tremendous conference to get things going.
And should note, there will be a little shakeup. I don't know if we can put that map back up one more time. As you see, one of the schools, California State University Bakersfield, CSU Bakersfield, over the next couple of years will be actually leaving the WAC. They're transitioning to the Big West to be with UC Irvine. And so that's and California Baptist really was the move that was made. Some view it as the move that was made to kind of replace CSU Bakersfield on their way out, and then Dixie State comes in and helps strengthen that conference, get the conference back up to 9 schools. New Mexico State plays football actually at the FBS level as an independent right now. Obviously, the WAC does not offer football at this point. We had a chance to talk to WAC Commissioner Jeff Hurd yesterday, we asked him about that, and we'll let that answer kind of cliff hang there for a minute and see what he said. You know, WAC doesn't currently offer football in the future. Who knows? We'll see. But Dixie State will be an FCS independent for the time being, and I think that's okay. You've got to have, you know, a 4-year transition process anyway, where you're trying to transition to being a full Division I member. You've got plenty of schools around you. They already announced series with SUU. Weber State, Montana State are all schools that Jason Boothe mentioned at the event yesterday. Future football games coming up with them. Not to mention, if you can ever possibly get a Utah or a BYU or Utah State on the schedule, you know, who knows? But I don't think Dixie State is going to have any trouble filling the schedule. Northern Arizona is just to the south, down in Flagstaff, not that far. The Trailblazers will be able to fill up the schedule, and you know, they're already working on that 2020 football schedule. We do know the first game will be at SUU in 2020 in September, so that'll be a fun way to literally kick things off. But that's, you know, that's how the conference looks right now, and it is geographically diverse. I feel like Dixie State fits into it. You've got, you know, natural rivals in the state, natural rivals from former conference mates, and big things on the horizon for Dixie State. We got to take a break, because waiting for us right now to join us on the show is Dixie State Director of Athletics, Dr. Jason Boothe. We're going to get his take on all of this. How did this all happen? How did it come to fruition so quickly over just the last year to 6 months? We'll ask him, and a lot more. Coming up next on this Saturday WAC edition of Trailblazer Weekly. Stick with us. There's more after this.
Do you think people like John McCain and other people would just sit there quietly on the sides, and that many Republican activists would refrain from registering their disapproval in the peanut gallery?
Some might argue that Republican activist is an oxymoron.
Oh, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of activism.
Right.
But do you see what I'm saying? If you just flip it right over on its head.
I would like to flip it on its head, and in fact, I'm already doing that, because my own position is free speech is free speech. Okay, and I'm kind of advocating for something that I'm really not supporting in this respect, as far as protesting or not protesting and being able to recognize your audience. What we need on either side, I don't care where you're coming from, is the ability to recognize the audience.
Where do you find the titans of classical music in St. George? Classical music on Radio St. George, 100.3 FM. Where do you find the legends of jazz? Evenings on Radio St. George, 100.3 FM.
Trailblazer Weekly is presented by the Dixie State Campus Store, the official store for Trailblazer and Dixie State clothing, as well as cheap textbooks, discounted computers, and supplies for students. They're located in the second floor of the Gardner Center and are open from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. during the week. Closed on Saturdays and Sundays? You can stop by any time because they'll be loaded with great Trailblazer swag all the time.
Welcome back inside the CEC TV studios on this Saturday special of Trailblazer Weekly. Indeed, the Division I special. The news breaking, as we talked about in the first segment, just yesterday. Dixie State going to make a transition to Division I. Never a more exciting time to be part of Dixie State athletics. And here to help us break it down is Dr. Jason Boothe, Director of Athletics here at Dixie State. Jason, thanks so much for being here. Like I said, there's never a more exciting time to be here at Dixie State than right now.
You got that right. This is a monumental moment for Dixie State University and Trailblazer Athletics. A lot of work and consideration has gone into this, and we didn't do it lightly. And so we feel very, very confidently this is the right decision, and we're very, very excited for what it'll bring.
Of course, we had the announcement at the Student Activities Center and the reception after at the Gardner Ballroom yesterday. on Friday. Still, if many didn't see that, some people may be wondering, how did this all come to be? Because it wasn't that long ago we were saying, I was even telling friends and family, it'll probably be 10, 15, 20 years down the road. How did this all come to fruition in just a short time over the last year?
We were just as surprised at the opportunity as everyone else. I mean, if you look back at previous stories and whatnot, where I've been asked, this is my 9th year here now, I've been asked this question since day one. When are we going to Division I? Dixie State is a great facilities, great programs. When are we going to go in Division I? And my answer was always, not for a long time. That it's probably in our future somewhere, but it's not on our radar screen just yet. In other words, it's down the road as the university grows and whatnot. But as President Williams was approached last spring by former UVU President Matt Holland about potentially exploring it, and his initial reaction was laughter, to be quite honestly, just kind of like, no, we're not ready for that. We want to be as dominant in Division II as we can before we grow into that. But that was just an off-the-cuff, response without really being prepared for it, literally out of the blue. And the more he thought about it and got calls from other presidents and talked around with his colleagues and other presidents, the thought of, well, we need to at least explore it, because you don't know how often these opportunities will come. The one thing you have to have in order to go to Division I is a conference invitation. So it's not like we could just on our own say, we're going to go Division I, and we're just going to go Division I, and that's it, our own decision. No, you have to have a conference. So with that interest, like, well, let's explore it. Took it to the Board of Trustees, and they overwhelmingly said, yes, we have to at least explore this. So from there, hired a consultant, did the review, and came back with the biggest question of financially, can it be done, which was really our biggest obstacle. Athletically, we're going to be fine, be very competitive just as we are in Division II, but financially, can we afford it? And we can. It will be a lot of work, don't get me wrong, just as Division II is a lot of work, to be honest. But we feel very comfortable and confident that we can do it, and this community can support a Division I program, just as many other communities around the nation, even with much smaller than ours, do. So we're comfortable with that part, and that was really the kind of the final, like, oh, wow, okay, now let's really start exploring this more publicly. And that's when we went with the forums and the surveys and talking with people and getting the input, and it's been overwhelmingly positive. So. We feel that the timing was right. Again, much quicker than we had ever anticipated, because it kind of came out of left field. But we're grateful for it and ready to go.
I mean, you take a look at it, and 2006, 2007 was that first year, that first jump to the NCAA Division II. I don't think anybody at that time would have thought, hey, 12, 13 years down the road, you're going to be talking about and even, making this jump to NCAA Division I. I mean, just talk about, the evolution of Dixie State athletics from junior college to NCAA Division II and now to NCAA Division I. I mean, it just seems like kind of the natural growth and progression with the community as well, growing so
the one thing
largely.
We found in this is that we feel that it really is the next natural step in the growth of not only the institution, but the community. This community, again, the fastest growing community in the in the nation. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a Division I program in there. That there's not a requirement for that, but it means that it could be supportive of one. UVU, if you remember, went from a JC all the way to Division I, so that was a huge jump. We've taken the intermediate step which was still a big jump from JC to Division II. And athletically and even financially, we've done very well. We've broken even, if not made a little bit of money every year, gone right back into the programs if we had made money. But the programs have been very successful athletically. We've won 21 conference championships, and this is our 13th year now. So more than one per year. We've had numerous academic and athletic All-Americans, over 500 student athletes on all academic lists and stuff. So very, very positive, including almost winning a national championship in softball in 2015. So we've proven on the field, on the courts, that we can be successful, even against Division I competition from time to time. So when you take those little pieces, now they're not respective of our entire success or not that we'll have at Division I, but when we have had a chance to play Division I competition, we've been very competitive. And in fact, won on a good number of occasions, including at UNLV in men's basketball a few years ago. Our men's basketball team just a few weeks ago lost on a last-second 3 to Wyoming, which no matter how down that team may be, that's a tough place to go into and compete. And we had the game. We had it, and they just hit a 3 at the buzzer on a tough shot. But that just shows that we're not that far off. So the difference between the competition of Division II and Division I is not as big as you might perceive. Football-wise, yeah, that's a little bit bigger of a jump, which is why we'll be in the FCS level, which is Southern Utah, Weber State. So again, it's a difference. No, don't get me wrong, and we'll have some growing pains for a few years as our recruiting starts to get more of the Division I athlete that we need. And but it'll be a fun transition to watch, and I think we'll be very pleased and very surprised with how quickly we're going to be competitive.
Dr. Boothe, you said in an interview a couple months ago that this is a monumental decision, not only for the athletic program, but for the school as well, and that a decision like this needs to be properly vetted. How do you go about doing that process? How do you vet this, and how do you go through every decision and make a decision like this?
Well, you talk to all the stakeholders. You got to get what their opinions are. And we started with a focus group in July with the consultants that were here. Focus groups of students, all the stakeholders represented, students, fans, boosters, alumni, faculty, staff, et cetera, and got an initial kind of read. And then from there, once the feasibility study was done, we went out to focus groups, town halls with students, and then faculty, staff, and the community, and just gathered input while having a lot of other informal discussions, just one-on-ones and other little meetings and talking with people in the community, passing in the supermarkets or in the stores, and just getting Hurd, we're looking at this. What do you think? What have you heard? Have you read the study? Yeah, it looks good. Or I'm worried about this. I'm worried about that. So we gathered all that input. And just threw all the concerns on the board, talked as a department, all the coaches, what are your concerns as a group, and myself with each coach one-on-one. What are your concerns? What would be the issues? Are you in favor of it? Are you not? And it was overwhelmingly in support, especially when if you can see that the financial piece is going to be pretty sound, and we, as in Dixie State, created that, not the consultants. We created that financial pro forma, so we're comfortable with that. And it's in line with our conservative, typical conservative, revenues. We're not saying, we're going to get $5 million in game guarantees in year one, and then we only come up with $300,000. No, nothing crazy like that. We're very conservative so that we're able to we're able to meet our expected revenues in order to have the expenses, and then not get the institution into a financial hole because of this move.
Obviously, a lot of tough decisions go into that. Let's talk a little bit about timeline. You've kind of said tentatively that you're aiming for July 2020 to be able to move. Talk about kind of the timeline, kind of what the process is going to be, because obviously you got to move out of the RMAC into Division I. Where's the timeline at today, and is the July 2020 timeline still?
July 2020 is the date, and the only thing that would get in the way of that is if the NCAA, if we don't do a good enough job with our strategic plan and our application that will be due in the spring of 20, in order to be in our first year of transition, July 1 of 20, then the NCAA may say you're not ready, and no, you're going to have to wait another year, so you're going to be Division II for another year. Now, that would be a disaster if that happens, and I don't foresee that happening because we've got all of our T's crossed and our I's dotted, and we'll make sure that that's the case before we get there, and we have several models to follow from other schools that have done it. So we know what we have to do to make sure that that we're going to get the thumbs up and ready to go, because we're going to be getting schedules for WAC competition and other non-conference competition at the Division I level for 2020, and so we're going to be ready. So again, that's the only piece that would get in the way of it, and I don't foresee that happening. But between now and then, we've got to get our plans together. We've got another year of RMAC competition for the 1920 year. And then, meanwhile, we'll be doing budgets and all that for that year, but also the next year to see what we need to do for planning-wise. But get our strategic plan ready to go that the NCAA will want to see, and then get rolling and apply and go from there. And then July 1 of 20 will be full speed.
Chatting with Dixie State Director of Athletics, Dr. Jason Boothe here on Trailblazer Weekly. Jason, as we continue to dive into this thing, and we just kind of hinted at it here, A lot of stuff to be done. Obviously, to go Division I, and I never knew this, it sounds simple. You only need two things. You got to have an invite from a conference, and then that, what is it, $1.7 million check. So obviously that's one of the big things looming that has to be done. But what are the other priorities? Obviously everything's going to have to be, and we'll do this couple of things this year, and that's why there's that 4-year period to get to full membership. What are we looking at for year one? Obviously you got to have the $1.7 million check. You get in, you get accepted. Coaches full time. Take us through that. What are the main priorities right off the bat?
Our pro forma calls for primarily getting the student athletes taken care of first in terms of scholarships, because that's one of the biggest differences between Division II and Division I is the amount of scholarships that you give to the student athletes. Specifically football, the maximum that we're going to be at for this next year for an equivalency in Division II is 34 scholarships, and our plan calls us to be at the maximum of FCS in year one of 63. So that's a big jump. But if we don't get up to the 63, then we can't get the guarantee games from the BCS teams, because there's some rules in there for that. So that's why it's important. While we wanted to get to 63, because we need our team to be competitive. We can't say, well, we'll go from 34 to 38 and then 47 and then 49. We won't get caught up. We've done the history and looked at other schools and how they've done it, and that's kind of the route some of them have taken, and it hasn't worked out too well for them immediately. Other schools that have ramped up quicker have been competitive right away. It's important that we plan that out and get the scholarships going. And then, there will be some additional assistant coaches, for example, to build up that support staff for them, support staff in the administrative side. But that's all stuff that we have to get ironed out here in the next 8 to 10 months as we get ready for our strategic plan to submit to the NCAA of what we're going to do when. Get it all lined out and ready to go.
Well, Dixie State going to Division I, joining the Western Athletic Conference. Of course, the WAC doesn't offer football. I'll go back a few years, and there would have been a football opportunity there, but just don't offer football. So a lot of people, I know this was covered yesterday at the meeting, but a lot of people are saying, well, the WAC doesn't offer football. Yeah. So FCS independent, right? FCS independent,
and so really that, as fans that are familiar with BYU, they're independent in the BCS level. We'll be independent in the FCS level, the football championship subdivision level. So we'll be on the same level as SUU and Weber State, but we'll be independent. So we won't have a conference championship to play for, but we'll be able to put a pretty fun schedule together as an independent and be able to display our team on a pretty good stage, from other FCS opponents to BCS opponents on occasion, to make a really fun environment for our fans here at home and also on the road.
How big do we look at that? Talking about football, it's something that we've all talked about. Attendance has been pretty good. We had some huge crowds this last year, but then it kind of tends to tail off at the end. And how big is it really that maybe the people around here don't know the names, and now maybe we're bringing in an SUU and a Weber State and a Northern Arizona. I know there's already plans going for some of those games. Is there that thought that we get these big names, it's going to help generate interest? People are going to want to come and see what's going on.
Well, that's the hope, and that's just a natural thing. Just like if you look at the NBA, when there's a marquee matchup, everyone wants to watch that. Back in the day of the Warriors and the Cavaliers during the regular season, when LeBron played for the Cavaliers and they came into Vivint Smart Home Arena, that was a hot ticket. You want to see that game. When you have let's say an SU or Weber State come into here and everyone knows that name, they're going to come just because they want to see that game. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to rest on that. We're going to have a lot of marketing promotions that we're going to have to still get out there to get people to be aware of it and get excitement, interest, but it will help. It'll just drive home that message even clearer. That's one issue we've had in Division II in the RMAC. We've found that this community just doesn't understand Division II as to what they are, and a lot of our opponents. In the RMAC, it got a little bit better because they're kind of familiar with some of the opponents in Colorado. And in fairness to the RMAC, we haven't even been in it long enough for them to really start to understand those schools and understand those rivalries. But I just want to say that this move to Division I in no way, absolutely no way, zero at all, had anything to do with the RMAC. That conference is phenomenal. It is an excellent Division II conference, and if not, in my opinion, the best Division II conference in the nation, by far. So if we decided to stay in Division II, we would have been in an excellent position in a phenomenal conference to do very, very good things on a national level. But we feel that this decision will just give us, for all the reasons we've talked about, a much better platform for the university. But yeah, football will be independent and playing on a national level as well and getting exposure for the university.
Let's talk a little bit about the transition from the RMAC to the Western Athletic Conference. What goes into, I mean, you can't just wake up one day and fill out a form and say, now we're in the WAC. What goes into leaving the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference and getting into the Western Athletic Conference?
Well, it's not much more than waking up one day and saying we're going to do that, but it's a few phone calls. But we've already notified, obviously the RMAC is aware. We notified them before the announcement out of courtesy, and they're aware we were looking into it, so they were briefed all along the way, and they had a chance to come in and talk to us and give us a little report about staying in Division II as to what that would do, and that was very helpful for us to weigh all options. But it's a matter of just notifying them that we'll be leaving on this date, and then officially notifying the WAC that we'll be coming in, and we signed some documents yesterday to do that. That will be in there on July 1 of 20, and then it's on the WAC to now start getting schedules together with us included. And that's really the key thing is that they need is that, yeah, we're coming, and now they can go ahead and get conference schedules together.
Obviously, the decision to ultimately go to Division I was President Williams' decision, but I'm sure you had somewhat of a large role in that process. Can you give us any information about kind of how that process went, about deciding and when it was decided, and then how you got all this, the banquet yesterday, and what was the timeline as far as when he decided and how it all came about?
Well, I don't know the exact day that he decided, but
he didn't call you right after.
He didn't know, but it was truly President Williams' decision, with consultation with all the stakeholders we talked about, especially the Board of Trustees and myself and others. But it's a university decision. This is not an athletics decision, it's a university decision. So that's why it was in his lap. It's going to impact the entire university. But it was probably, it was after the forums and after we've gathered all the information that he, officially said, yeah, okay, we're gonna do this. Let's get people together here on campus and start planning an event. What's a good date? And we picked the 11th, and after the holidays, and so that we made sure we had time to get it ready, but also time to make sure that we were vetting all the information. So it was close to the holidays that this final decision was made, and we started putting things together for the 11th. To have the dignitaries that we had yesterday with Lionel Hollins and whatnot. The governor was phenomenal. So it's been remarkable and quite overwhelming and humbling to have all this excitement and support. So we're excited for the future.
Dixie State heading to Division I, going to join the Western Athletic Conference, going to compete in the WAC, and we're almost out of time here in this segment. Jason, we appreciate you stopping by, but lastly, I'm just excited to see some of these rivalries renewed.
Yeah.
We thought that maybe it would be a while before we played against Cal Baptist again, and now here we go. Games in the future back in the same conference as Grand Canyon University. There's already rivalry feelings, that for some very tight basketball games over the years.
As we announced yesterday that UVU, we're going to get a rivalry cup together and go back and forth. So it was great to have their AD here to help us celebrate. So it's exciting.
Be able to have that in-state rivalry and kind of go back and forth, and just excited for this move to the WAC, and that's probably the poorest word I could have chose, because it's much more than just exciting. Going to be a lot of work, but really I think something that as we've seen the community get more and more excited over the last few years, this is just the cherry on top, and I think we're really going to see that explode. So
off and away.
Dixie State Director of Athletics, I can't say that today, it's a tongue twister, Dr. Jason Boothe joining us today. Thank you so much for being here. We've got much more to talk about on the show. We do have to take a break. When we come back, I had an opportunity to chat for a few minutes with WAC Commissioner Jeff Hurd at the banquet last night, and after the announcement was made, to get his thoughts on Dixie State and how this all came about from the WAC's perspective. We'll go to those comments right after this break on Trailblazer Weekly.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
For over a century, Dixie State University has been shaping the trailblazers of tomorrow by providing a culture of active learning, active life. With a paradigm of real-world experience mixed with cutting-edge technologies and rich traditions, we provide one of the most affordable educations in the West, set against the most stunning backdrop on the planet.
See on page 4 that the projections need to be earthquake next Thursday.
Seriously? Thursday? Can't do that.
This is really inconvenient.
I have yoga that day. I have no time for this. So.
I can't do Thursday, but I can do Friday.
Disasters don't plan ahead. You can. Talk to your loved ones about how you're going to be ready in an emergency. Don't wait. Communicate.
Fast-paced family life in need of a slowdown?
Hello, I'm Dr. Spruce. Did you know all those green shapes on maps are parks and forests? It's true. Visit discovertheforest.org and plan to visit a park or forest near you, instead of just wondering what it would have been like.
While the word forest might make you think of distant lands from far, far away, please note parks and forests are closer than you think, which means things like beautiful scenery, fresh air, and family time are also closer than you think.
Hey guys, how are you today? Good. I'm here to talk about how with technology you can make amazing worlds. Come with me. My team and I bring the Halo world to life. Is that you? That is me. I wasn't a math genius and I knew nothing about coding. But you guys do. You guys have the power to change things.
I want your job.
I want you to have my job.
Trailblazer Weekly is the official show of Dixie State Athletics. You can keep up with all the Trailblazer athletic action with pictures, stats, and game recaps at DixieStateAthletics.com. While you're at it, don't forget you can follow our show on Twitter as well with @DSUBlazerWeekly.
And here we are on location, Trailblazer Weekly. Keric, Seegmiller, Drayson Ball, joined by WAC Commissioner Jeff Hurd after the monumental announcement over at the Student Activity Center, Dixie State to move up to Division I status, accepting an invitation to join the Western Athletic Conference. Jeff, first of all, thanks for being with us and for taking some time with us, for being here in St. George to celebrate this monumental occasion. And appreciate you being here. Let's jump right into it and let's talk Dixie State. You talked a little bit about it in the press conference, in the event, but we're here on the Trailblazer Weekly show now, and let's talk Dixie State. You covered it. Why Dixie State? What was it that jumped out about this school first and foremost?
Well, there's never just one thing. There's a multitude of reasons that the WAC was interested in Dixie State. It has to do with where the university is today, where it was 10 years ago, and where it's going to be 10 years from now. And the commitment of the university president, the university hierarchy, the past success of the programs, and where we see it fitting into the league. It's a third Division II institution that we've brought into the conference in the last 6 years. It fits nicely into our geographic pattern, and competitively it fits very nicely also.
Yeah, you mentioned those, two, now us being Dixie State being the third Division II to make the leap, and in the last decade, you mentioned it being a young conference during your press conference, during the event there. What kind of effect does that have on the future of the Western Athletic Conference and kind of the energy and going forward?
Well, I think we're building a really strong foundation. That's been our intent all along. We're trying to build for the long term. We need to develop that. We still have some more work to do on that. But I like where we are today. I like the direction we're going, and more importantly, our board of directors likes the direction we're going, and so do our member institutions. So we have a bright future. We have a long, storied history, but quite honestly, we're kind of now developing a new future as we move on.
Jeff, what do you expect from Dixie State as far as competitively? Obviously, we have some national rivalries in state with UVU, as recently as Cal Baptist University and Grand Canyon University. How do you expect them to kind of compete on that kind of level with those national rivalries?
Well, much like Grand Canyon and California Baptist, I think they'll move right in and be extremely competitive right off the bat. I don't think there's going to be there's certainly a learning curve in anything, especially when you change divisions, but I don't expect it to be a steep one. And I would expect that Dixie State will move into the WAC, be highly competitive in its first year in the conference, and will continue to grow. And I would fully expect it to be an upper division team as the years move on.
You mentioned in the announcement moments ago that you visited Dixie State back in the spring, and then obviously you were here yesterday, and you've been here all day today. What's kind of stood out to you about the area, about the campus, about the people you got to know here associated with the university? What has stood out the most with this community?
Well, the first thing was it's a lot warmer here in January than it is in Denver, so that was good. No, it's just, I think the obvious things. It's a growing community. You can see that. It's a very attractive community from a just visual standpoint, and you can tell that the city and the community itself is very devoted to the university, and those are key elements, I think, in any regard.
You mentioned that with these Division II schools and a lot like them, Dixie State, a school that has the infrastructure, has the facilities, has things like that to be able to make this move in the next couple of years. How big of a role did that play in looking at the Burns Arena, the newly renovated Trailblazer Stadium, Bruce Hurst Field in baseball, obviously softball needing some renovations, but how big of a role did facilities play when looking at the school that you wanted to add?
Well, again, there wasn't any single thing that played the biggest role, but they did play a large role, if that makes any sense. Good facilities already in place. We recognize that any time you bring a Division II institution into the conference, there's going to be a growth period involved for some facilities. But in my mind and in our president's minds, many of the facilities that Dixie State has right now are Division I facilities. So I don't think that there's going to be a great long period where they're going to have to improve a lot. They have to improve some, certainly, but for the most part, very good facilities right now.
Of course, Dixie State playing football. WAC does not offer football at this point. I'm sure it's a question you get asked a lot. Is the WAC looking at adding football? What's that situation? What's that looking like right now?
Well, yes, you're correct. I get asked that question quite a bit. And my answer is basically that, you never say never to anything. And right now, are we looking at football? The answer is no. Would we at some point in the future? It depends on circumstances. You never know how things can change. The WAC has a long history of football. So we'll just have to see what happens as time goes on.
Jeff, how did you kind of go about the process of kind of narrowing in on Dixie? I mean, obviously, you have a variety of Division II schools and other schools to entertain bringing into the WAC. How is it that you narrowed it to Dixie State University?
Well, originally, when we started the whole idea of moving to Division II institutions and trying to see which ones were interested in or had D1 aspirations, Dixie State was one of approximately 25 schools that we had a list and that we started contacting at the time, either me personally or through our presidents. And a number of reasons. One of them, geographically, it's a great fit, for us. And number two, it follows some institutions that it has a history with. I think that's another thing. It gives us a second university in the state of Utah. And as many people know, the WAC geographically is rather spread out right now. And we are trying to do what we can to kind of shrink the geography a little bit to make some more sense of it. And this is one of the moves that makes a lot of sense to us.
Western Athletic Conference Commissioner Jeff Hurd joining us here on Trailblazer Weekly. Jeff, got a long line of people lining up to be able to talk to you here and other media members. We appreciate you taking time with us after this monumental event. Thank you so much for being here, and we really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks so much.
Excuse me. Just very excited about that interview with WAC Commissioner Jeff Hurd. It was a fun time to be able to kind of go into the media room with Jeff yesterday and to feel his genuine excitement. And you could feel that through the event as well. But you could tell that he was excited and he realizes how much of an addition and an asset Dixie State will be. And I think he's trying to portray that to everybody right now as well. That Dixie State going to be a great asset to the WAC. And just a big thank you to Jeff Hurd for taking that time with us. By the way, how about that new WAC Dixie State backdrop? I thought that was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah, I love that, as well as the backdrop we got here on our set. It's cool to be able to see, the WAC associated now with Dixie State. You see Dixie State's logo, you see the WAC logo. It's just cool to see those kind of be pushed in together now. And obviously, going back to the interview with Mr. Hurd, obviously, it was just great to have him, like you mentioned, talk about how much he liked the community and the school and St. George as a city, and obviously, great decision for the school to be able to do that, and great time catching up with Commissioner Hurd.
Absolutely. I did ask him one quickly before we got to go to break again. There was one thing that I kind of hinted at that we talked to Jeff about, and that was WAC football. And asked him about that, because it's a fair question. A lot of people are wondering, what are you doing if the WAC doesn't have football? Well, Dixie State going to be an FCS independent. Well, then, there's the rumors flying. Well, is the WAC going to add football again? And he answered those, very nicely, very genuinely, and just said, well, quite frankly, right now, no. The WAC isn't looking at adding football. But never say never. You never know what's going to happen. Certainly, it's on their radar, and that was in the feasibility study that was put together for Dixie State as part of Dixie State joining the WAC, that the WAC should at least be open to adding football should opportunities present itself down the road. So that question was asked, and that question was answered. We're going to take a quick timeout, and we'll come back to put a bow on the show. The WAC announcement was not the only big announcement made at the event yesterday. Softball Stadium got a big donation in what will be some much needed renovations. We'll tell you who and how much coming up next on Trailblazer Weekly.
Radio Dixie 91.3. We don't play that. Nope, not that. A big fat no there. That's what we play. And stuff like that. On St. George's only alternative, Radio Dixie 91.3. Oh, and from 9 till midnight, we play this. I need a one dance. And this. Radio Dixie 91.3 FM.
I take the road less traveled, run free, unwind, unravel, someplace outside with lots to do. Green trees, red rocks, and don't forget that blue sky. The sunshine shining, sunshine pouring on me. Think I might just stay a while. Say hooray all day because the sun is gonna shine on me. Sun is gonna shine on me. Sun's gonna shine on me.
The Dixie State Stretch Internet Portal and the RMAC Network is your home for all Trailblazer athletics live streaming. Don't miss a second of the action. You can watch DSU games home and away at portal.stretchinternet.com/Dixie State. That's portal.stretchinternet.com/Dixie State.
Welcome back inside the CEC TV studios one final time as our time winds down on our Saturday special of Trailblazer Weekly, and we really can't take too much longer. We joked earlier when we knew this announcement might be coming, about doing like a 2-hour special. We've got good 18 months to break this thing down, and we will. We'll probably talk about it every show, but we've got some basketball in the Burns Arena that we got pack up the crew and get down to as well. So we can't take too much longer. As we mentioned before the break, Drayson, want to mention something that also was announced at the event, and in fact, it was announced before the Division I WAC official announcement. And it was funny because Dr. Boothe, Jason Boothe, joked after making this announcement. He said something to the effect of, "Well, that was the announcement. Thanks for everyone for coming. Well, have a great day." And everyone laughed, and they knew that really wasn't the main announcement. But a very generous couple here in St. George, Mr. and Mrs. Dennis and Diane Lyman, big supporters of Dixie State softball, have donated a $1 million gift to the softball program, specifically for renovations of Carl Brooks Field. And obviously, it's going to take more than just that $1 million donation to get everything done that they want to. They showed some renderings of what they want it to look like, and boy, man, that looked fantastic. And it's probably the facility here on campus that needs the most love now that Trailblazer Stadium has been upgraded. Just a fantastic time to announce that, and hopefully should get the ball rolling for more people to join in as well, and to make that into a reality, and give our softball student athletes, the Division I caliber facility that they deserve to be playing in when it's time to play Division I softball.
Yeah, it was certainly a special announcement. Obviously, caught a lot of people off guard. Obviously, a lot of people knew kind of what the announcement was going to be for Division I, but I don't know if anyone other than a few select people, yourself included, knew about the announcement for the donation. And it was very, very special because the linemen went up on stage and they were, said that they had donated $1 million. And then shortly thereafter, they got a well-deserved standing ovation from the packed Student Activity Center. And that was just really fun. And then one of the things that really stood out to me was after they had made the announcement, they walked off stage and Mrs. Lyman turned and said, "Go Trailblazers," to the whole crowd. Really, really fun moment and well-deserved recognition for those guys to be able to make that donation. And I have no doubt that it'll go to good use and help aid a well-established softball program already.
Well, as someone that that uses the softball facilities and not out on the field playing actually, but being the scorekeeper at the softball games, I'm looking forward to those upgrades as well, because that means I'll have new space to work in as well when keeping those statistics and being able to have the press box, and it will be fantastic to get that project going, and certainly a great jumpstart from Dennis and Diane Lyman, and so we got to give them a shout out and one more big thank you. And like I said, I like that you mentioned that standing ovation because it lasted a couple of minutes. I mean, it wasn't just like a quick, hey, let's give them a standing clap. It lasted a long while, as it should. Just very, very generous donation, and we are grateful for that. In our last few minutes that we have here, we should mention, and let's mention the basketball games last night. These were games that I work in athletics. I hear things every once in a while, so I knew this announcement was coming. And I had these games circled on my calendar for a long time, knowing that the announcement was going to be made, and then just hoping for 2 wins that night to be able to show the community. It was the Red Out as well, sponsored by American First Credit Union. They gave out the red T-shirts. Packed house, great crowd, second largest crowd in the women's program history, and over 4,000 during the men's game as well. Around 4,200, I think, was the announced attendance there, and they both won. They got the job done. The community was excited about the announcement. They came out for the Red Out, and they were treated to some fantastic basketball. Dixie State women's team getting a 62-55 victory. Drayson, you and I were both there, and you got to call that game. Dixie State overcoming some adversity in that game. Martine went down, with a slight injury. Hopefully she'll be back soon. But the team rallied, and they were able to win that game. Their biggest win of the season. In fact, Coach Gustin told me after the game that he feels like that's probably their biggest win since he's been the coach.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, they, like you mentioned, I went through tremendous adversity in the first half, losing your point guard and the person that kind of runs your offense. But how about Allie Frank? She really carried the load for them offensively, specifically in that first half. She had 10 points in that first half and really kind of helped them get over the hump, and then obviously scored a bunch of crucial points down the stretch in that fourth quarter to get them to that victory, and a well-deserved and a well-fought victory for the women's basketball team, despite losing that injury, the Mariah Martini injury in the first half.
Yeah. The men's team put the cherry on top of everything with a 69-38 victory over the Roadrunners of MSU Denver. That is a single-game record for the least amount of points allowed in a single game. In fact, Dixie State set 3 defensive records in that game, and that was the one that really highlighted the game. You wouldn't have thought it as the game started. MSU Denver opened the game on a 9-0 run, and it was a very low-scoring game. Dixie State did not lead during the first half until Jack Pagankoff hit a fadeaway frozen rope three-pointer from the right wing as time expired to give Dixie State a 1-point lead at halftime. That jump-started the team. The Trailblazers outscored MSU Denver 50-20 in the second half to get up to their scoring average while holding MSU Denver to just 38 points. A gritty win, a win that they desperately needed. And will this be the jump start to, the traditional, okay, Dixie State slow start? Oh, but here they go. They go on a tear through January and February. Can they do it again and play themselves into a good spot in the RMAC tournament? We'll find out.
Yeah, it was a fun game and a heck of a defensive effort for the Trailblazers. Obviously, when you can get a win like that in that kind of a fashion, it's always got to be a boost, especially on a day like yesterday in front of a packed house. It just was really, really fun to witness.
So both teams winning last night. Very athletic Chadron State teams in the Burns Arena tonight. In fact, coming up in just an hour and a half at 5:30, the women's game will tip off. The men's game will be at 7:30. You can see those games right here on CEC TV, on the DSU Athletics YouTube page, as well as on the Dixie State Athletics Stretch internet portal. We'll have the games, the women's game on Radio Dixie 91.3 FM. The men's game will be on ESPN Radio 97.7 FM. That will do it for today's show, our Saturday special of Trailblazer Weekly. It's official. Dixie State is going to the WAC, moving on up to Division I status. I'm excited. Drayson's excited. We are all excited about it. We appreciate our CEC TV crew for all they do, for our entire crew. For Drayson Ball, I'm Keric Seegmiller, thanking you for watching. You can watch the show anytime on demand at Dixie State Athletics YouTube page. We'll catch you next time on the show. Go Trailblazers.